Steve and Carol to talk about this. Steve, I mean, that's an amazing thing for somebody from the Obama administration to say that he doesn't care about human rights. He didn't listen to the speech. The whole speech was about human rights, and it was about the despicable behavior of the regime that has been in power for almost 60 years. Let's just play a soundbite from what Trump said.
Many of you witnessed terrible crimes committed in service of a depraved ideology.
A depraved ideology. I couldn't think of a better phrase to describe the Castro regime. And you compare that to the way President Obama dealt with him. He went down there, was holding hands with Raul Castro. Fidel was either dead or on his deathbed. But look at this. They were shaking hands. They were buddy-buddy. It's a very different doctrine, a way of dealing with these dictatorships.
That's right, David. And unfortunately, President Obama was an appeaser, as he has been to a lot of other thugs in the world, did nothing for human rights, did nothing to release political prisoners, did nothing to ease the oppression in Cuba. And one of the things that President Trump is pushing, which is a good thing in terms of future liberalization, is that these hotels and others which are controlled by the military will have nothing to do with them, but more importantly, pushing so the Cuban workers get paid directly by foreign companies, not by the government. The government takes the cash, gives the workers nearly worthless pesos.
That's exactly
and
right.
So now what he says is one stepstone of progress will be workers get actual cash from the companies, not the government.
Carol, the bottom line is what the Obama administration was doing was giving them everything for nothing in return. In this case, he does hold out a carrot in addition to a stick. He says, look, if you guys really change, if you have free political elections, you have political parties other than the Communist Party, we will talk and negotiate, but nothing more for nothing.
Yeah, I think that everything that you said is correct, but I do find it slightly bizarre and a bit hypocritical because if you think back a couple of weeks, you had President Trump standing with his hand on a glowing orb with the people of the leaders of Saudi Arabia, who obviously have a lot of human rights violations themselves. So I understand what you're saying. I personally think that we need as many steps as we can to have free trade with Cuba to empower those Cuban people to be more successful. I don't know if this throws a wrench in that plan or will facilitate that plan. We'll see. But, you know, again, in the sort of the context of all the things that he could be doing, I'm not sure that this is where Americans want him to be spending his time.
I do have to say just one thing, Carol, before we go, which is that Jeane Kirkpatrick, who was once our UN ambassador, she said there's a difference between an authoritarian government and a totalitarian government, and clearly that would be the difference between what's happening in Saudi Arabia and what has been happening in Cuba for the past 60 years. I've been to Cuba. Big difference, totally totalitarian in its nature and design. But we thank you. Steve Forbes, Carol Roth, have a great weekend.